we've got JP or James and Gemma Duff, sharing some of their industry knowledge today. So we'll just crack in, as I say. My first question was, what's the real vibe of the drinks game right now? Hot, cold, or confused? Straight into it.
I think the vibe of the drinks game at the moment probably depends on how far back you're looking. I think if we go pre-COVID, the vibe of the drinks game right now probably feels somewhat subdued potentially. But I think if we look at what has been going on over the last couple of years in different segments of the drinks industry, particularly, right now feels quite buoyant, quite positive. We've probably stabilised in Australia's big beverage boom right now, and I don't think that's over. I think people are taking a breath. And particularly for those who want to start a drinks brand, the topic of today, I think there are some people who are taking it a little bit slower, learning a little bit more about what they need to know and maybe what they don't know, and that they're going to come back, not come back, but they're going to come through strongly in the years to come. So I think it's a breather rather than anything else.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that there's never been more ideas possible, and there's never been more flavor opportunities and ways to connect with customers, ways for brands who aren't in the beverage game to suddenly create a beverage game that makes sense for a beverage brand that makes sense for their brand. You know, they might be doing clothes and are now doing some kind of drink, or they review food and they've made energy drinks, or there's lots of different verticals, I guess. And I don't know, I kind of love that possibility. You know, you can use co-manufacturers, you can get ingredients from anywhere. Anything is possible now in it. There's still building the customer loyalty to your product is something that's still like on the incline. But otherwise, we're seeing more and more drinks in cans than we've ever seen before. We're seeing more brands than we've ever seen before. So in those ways, it's kind of hot.
And I think from where we're sitting, to follow on from what Jem's talking about, there are lots of people launching drinks that don't necessarily want to take over the world, right? We've got lots of celebrities who are using drinks as an extension of their brand. And we've got, like Gem alludes to, you know, clothing brands and sports brands doing their own waters and stuff like that. Drinks are now merchandise. Drinks are merch. So from where we sit, we're seeing heaps of people launch drinks or create drinks-based products that aren't necessarily destined for the shelves of Australia's big retailers. And they're being utilised in ways to take people's brands from other places in their lives or other places in the world into the hands of consumers and kind of give them something that's credible and useful in that moment, like a branded water or a branded hydration drink at the end of doing something, you know, sporty or healthy or those sorts of things. So I think there's probably important to kind of pull that apart. We're seeing drinks and this great Australian drinks boom, like Gem talks about, but if you're only looking at the shelves of big retailers, you wouldn't be seeing that like we are.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, like the extension of someone's brand. And I think like it's almost like if you said, okay, let's take Jennifer Aniston. Everyone knows who she is.
Love.
And love. And you look
Yours?
at her aesthetically, she's obviously very beautiful. People want to buy into who she is. And so let's say she builds out a drinks brand. Potentially it's around health and wellness. So they almost want to get that feeling of what it's like to be Jennifer Aniston. She's selling the kind of dream and that brand. And it's, again, it's an extension of who she is. And it's almost like, what does it feel like? What does it taste like to be Jennifer Aniston? I mean, that's pretty fucking cool when you think about it, to be able to do something like that. So it's interesting. Do you think that there's actually room for new brands, or just do you think we're out of patience at this point? Where are we at?
I reckon in 1830, people thought there wasn't room for new brands. Like, there's always room for new brands, right?
Drinks
Like,
brands, I mean.
yeah, I think there's always like change, innovation, things that people want to changing. People want to be engaged in different ways. They want to try different things. They want to always chase that feeling of cool or acceptance or different psychological motivations. And in that sense, there's just always going to be room for new brands and new ways of feeling. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's infinite.
Alongside that, there are a lot of people who are trying to find different business models to take beverages to market at the moment
Mm,
as well. And so the direct to consumer model is one that's being explored in a couple of different segments of the beverage market at the moment, delivering drinks into home. And that can be in cans, but also more broadly in sachets and multi serve, type containers and stuff like that. So I think there's definitely room for more brands. And what I
mm,
hope that we explore creatively alongside that is the new business models that can potentially proliferate those brands, because without a really strong functioning business foundation beneath the brand can't exist. And so I talk to a lot of people when they say, "Oh, I'm building a brand." And I'm like, "Are you building a business too?"
Mm.
Because you need to do both. And one
sure.
without the other, it's really tricky to exist. So, is there room for new brands? To your question, yes, there are, Sash. And are there room for new business models to kind of forge the proliferation of some of those new brands? Absolutely. And we're seeing some really cool stuff in that space from some trailblazers in our industry locally and around the world too.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, I yeah, kind of didn't really think about it like that in terms of, are you building a brand, are you building a business, and like there's actually two streams there, and how those develop out is pretty actually really cool. I mean, when someone says to you guys, "I'm starting a drinks brand," what's the first thought? And be very, very, very honest. That's it. That comes into your head that you never say it out loud.
Probably like for me, I'll go, oh yeah. And it's for me, it's about those questions. If there's answers to the next questions, right? Of like, have you considered who your manufacturer is? Have you talked to recipe formulators yet? Do you know
Very
where it's going to sit
logical.
on shelf? Who are you going to compete against? Who's your perfect customer? And
Yeah.
if they have answers to those questions, and I think there's kind of a path, and I do really believe in people who have never done it before being successful. I don't think that that is actually a problem. It's just more
Mm.
about that next thought, you know? Yeah. And how much energy and effort are they knowledgeable somewhat or want to hear about the numbers behind owning a drinks brand?
That does take me to another question that I have. Why do founders think it's cheap to start a beverage brand or beverage business? I think there's this kind of misconception that, oh yeah, let's start a drinks brand and it's pretty straightforward and financially not going to be too taxing. But what's the reality from your guys' standpoint? Big question.
Yeah, I'm still on the last question. My brain's still on the last question. Um, I'm going to answer that first. When somebody says they're going to start a drinks brand, it's not up to me to judge. I certainly, like Jem, a couple of questions pop into my mind. Um, One of the ones that people don't necessarily think about are, Jem mentioned who's it for, but what are they currently buying now? And what are the reasons for them to not buy what they're buying now and buy what you're bringing to market? It's a really deep question. And often when people are in their own world, so like, I've got this great product and I think it's great and it's going to take the world by storm. But it's like, what value does that actually have in the consumer's life? And are we solving a problem that doesn't exist right now, or one that does exist and we're going to do it better or different or those sorts of things? So a lot of what I talk about with those folks who have got a great idea is, how are we going to reach that target consumer and how are we going to bring them across into us and create a purchase from where they currently are? So that's really deep, and I don't go there first, but it's definitely a question I like to answer, and we get there most of the time.
Mm. Do you ever get that feeling though? Like, I suppose you guys have both been in this game for a fair amount of time. I would say I won't go into the numbers and give away your age, but or I can. But I suppose, like, is there ever an eye roll, or is there ever kind of like, oh, here we go, or is it always met with a pretty good, like, okay, what can we do here? Like, like, in all honesty?
I would say that most of the time, if I have eye rolled, I've been wrong.
Oh,
And
that's
that's like a good
cool.
lesson. because people surprise you all the time, and people are capable of learning very quickly and capable of taking that input. So oftentimes it can actually be the opposite. It's ones that I think 100% will work that might not actually have the people power or the passion behind it to make it work. And it's the people who are kind of the underdog story, which is always the case in Australia, who you think, geez, that's probably got no hope. And then them able to make it happen simply because they have the motivation and care and commitment to the project. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's always a good lesson for me. Is any times in my life where I've sort of been like, poof, and I've been like, oh yeah, okay, I was wrong.
You've got a lot more to prove when somebody says no or puts barriers up, which
True.
is kind of what Gem's getting at, right? When somebody says no, that won't work. There are so many founders and entrepreneurs who were spurred on by those words from somebody they respected and have gone on to do unreal things. So yeah, I don't necessarily see, particularly at East Coast, it's not my role to judge anyone's idea. It's my role to help facilitate their idea getting to market in the best possible way. And if I can help them make a few less mistakes along the way that save them time or money or effort or anything like that, I think that's more my role as a customer partner at East Coast rather than to be judge and jury on whether their idea is very good or not.
Also, we're often not the customer. And I think that's always a hard thing for most people in different industries is that it might be a drink. Like I don't drink energy drinks, but geez, there's a lot of people that do. So,
You can send them to me,
I can't
Gem.
really be the judge of that.
If you kind of just circle back, if you were to say like, okay, well, if I was to say, okay, I've got 20 grand, should I start a drinks business? Have I got, is that enough, or should I just go and take a holiday instead? What's kind of, what's your thinking around that? Like, I know a lot of people do have ideas with mates, or they kind of crowdfund something and they think this is a great idea, and potentially it is a great idea. Is that a number that we're looking at, or are we thinking no, dig a bit deeper or go on the holiday?
20 grand's not a lot of money, really buy much of a car for $20,000. So I think if we draw parallels to other things, if we had 20 grand in our bank account right now, I'd be like, woohoo, right? Because in consumer land, 20 grand feels like a lot of money. In the business world, $20,000 is not really a lot of money. And the fact that we can't buy, too much of a car for $20,000,
Yeah.
I can draw the parallel to not really being able to buy too much of a business startup for 20 grand. However, it is possible, depending on the individual kind of networks and I guess experience of each person and stuff like that. So 20 grand's not heaps. If you had 50, we're going to be able to do a little bit more with it. But I think the most important thing is not how much money you're starting with, but how much money are you going to have in a couple of months' time and a couple of months after that, because it's affording your second and your third production run that is always the hardest. It's actually really easy to make a drink in Australia for the first time. It's much harder to be able to afford your second and your third and your fourth run while doing marketing and sales and logistics and running a business and all of those sorts of things.
That's like a gold nugget, I reckon. If people knew that straight away, that would give them so much more understanding of the possibilities that are there, and also what they need to do.
I agree. The only other thing I always think is that you can do it for 20,000, exactly what JP is doing. You can do a sort of run, very small. You can start to scale up. You can sell out of your first runs and then go again and slowly build, which I definitely recommend. But also to be thinking that if your production run is going to cost $20,000 and that's your whole budget, you need to be thinking about producing the product. It would be 50% of the money that you have, and you need the other 50% for marketing, getting out there, getting the product on shelf, and that next step. So I'd be thinking at least if you have 20,000, you've only got 10,000 you can spend on the manufacturing of your product.
That's a great rule of thumb, Gem, and a great working ratio. I like that a lot.
I think people are going to listen to that and go have a big aha moment and really take something away from that. Honestly, like that's really interesting and very practical advice. honestly. Um, Changing lanes slightly around money. Are people chasing trends or chasing chaos at this point? Like, because I feel like we do see a lot of brands like kind of, they're keen, that's for sure. And we see some really cool shit. Honestly, we see some of the coolest drinks brands out there. But where are we at, kind of, in the landscape?
Where are we at? I don't know, Jim. What do you think? Are people chasing chaos or trends?
I think they're chasing to stand out. I think it's everyone's always chasing to be cool, right? And
Yep.
chasing to be cool is a funny thing. The evolution of the idea of cool is an interesting thing, but ultimately it's about being yourself is what tends to be cool. So that creates being standing out, and that's what people are trying to do. They're trying to like get themselves seen on shelf. They're trying to find a bit of a gap in a market somewhere, and that is causing the chaos, I suppose, of just trying to do anything that might just be different, maybe without reason or rhyme behind it as well. It's almost just like explode a little bit, get some kind of eyes on you. Yeah, so I think in that sense, people are chasing that kind of chaos. And I think that there's so much you feel like you can do now with digital marketing and social media and TikTok, and you have to be doing all of these crazy things.
Mm,
As I probably believe that you can focus on a couple of key strategies, and that can actually get you further. But at the start of any business, I mean, I don't really blame people. I would probably do the same, is try to hit a lot of stuff, see what works, and then invest further in that.
yeah.
But the quicker that you can get to three staple kind of things you're going to focus on, the better.
Mm.
Sasha, I've got a different answer that wasn't one of your options. I think a lot of people are chasing a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow.
Does it exist?
And that, people are seeing this drinks boom that we're just taking a breath in the middle of at the moment. And they see how reasonably easy, like we said earlier, it is to create the first run of your product.
Yeah.
But because their mindset is building a brand and they think that building a brand leads at the end of the rainbow to a pot of gold, they're missing really crucial business basics and foundations. And one
Mm.
of the ones I talk to some founders about are giving your product away for free. So, like Jem mentioned, you've got $20,000, you've got 50% of that max to spend on production, you spend $10,000 on cans, and then people go, okay, well, I'm building a brand, so I have to get my brand out there. So I need to go and give away a whole bunch of those cans for free, like Red Bull do. And it's like, okay, we're in a very different space here, right? If you go and give away a lot of your first production run, where is the money coming from to pay for your second or your third? How have you generated revenue off that expense and off those finished goods to be able to afford number two and number three? And so chasing that pot of gold by building a brand leads a lot of people to make decisions that have no regard for the business basics and foundations in building both a business as well as building a brand. So I think they're chasing a pot of gold.
Mm. Yeah, I'd agree with that. That's a good chat.
Thanks,
But
mate.
is the gold there? I think that's the question. Is it possible for them to get to the gold?
Oh, good question.
I reckon, yeah. I mean, we're seeing
Yeah.
it, right? Poppy's been
Yeah.
bought. You see brands be bought. You see
Yep.
people obsessed with brands. And I think that the business models do exist for it to be a great business as well. And I do think that it is possible. It might not feel like that right this very minute, but if you're building a great business, that great business, we're talking 5 or 10 years, I think that pot of gold can exist for great businesses and great brands, to JP's point.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of the examples we see globally are big and obviously grab headlines and stuff like
Mm.
that. I think to bring it back to Australia, where a lot of our folks are operating, are those big paydays and that pot of gold available right now?
Mm.
No, but business is a long term game. So
Yeah.
Jen uses 5 or 10 years as kind of a horizon. Now, if your brand doesn't exist your brand probably won't exist in 5 or 10 years if you don't have a really solid business foundation to what you're building there. But I think there will be pots of gold.
Mm.
Um, where they will be, and who has them is probably the thing that might change a little bit. We might actually start to see some of Australia's retailers buying brands to put into their private label portfolio, much the same as we've seen big multinational drinks companies sort of buy craft and independent businesses and put them into their portfolio. We may see some of the retailers take that approach, or we might start to see wholesalers and distributors actually bringing brands in to vertically integrate as well. So I'm interested to see where the vertical integration comes from, because that's where the money will come from. And yeah, private equity in Australia is probably also taking a little breath at the moment, and is potentially looking in other places with lower cost bases and faster and harder growth rates. But I don't think that's forever.
Do you think a strategy or there has been strategies for brands to be brought out? Like, do you think that that's what? Do you ever see that come through? Like, do you think that should be a strategy, or do you think, or as part of that question, do you see them kind of wanting to include that?
I think it can be sorry, you go, JP.
No, you go, Jem. We're both ready.
I feel like the second person gets to build on the first. It's much better. But no, I think that it can be an option of exit, but I don't think that you should be building your business based off that conclusion, because it's rare and unlikely. Not to say that it can't happen, but I think your focus should be on building a great business and a great brand for whichever your long-term goals are as a person and as a business person, with the options of, how you might end up making equity or thing like that, being that, okay, cool, that's some things that we could work towards, would be how I would view that.
Yeah.
Starting a business doesn't always have to end in selling it to somebody. Like, people wear the number of exits these days as a badge of honor, and it's a real kind of, there's some real cachet in the number of exits you have, particularly on places like LinkedIn and stuff like that. But there are plenty of fantastic businesses in Australia who have been started without an exit in mind. Chris talked about, the East Coast business and building an enduring sort of family business that him and Mel want to work in, with great people doing really good things for our customers and solving client problems and stuff like that. Like, that's where they get their happy vibes from. And that might change over time, but there are so many different kind of slots on this range of why do you want to work for yourself and why do you want to build a business. And, having a massive payday at the end of it can be one of those, but also not having a boss and, buying yourself a salary and building a business that your kids want to work in and working every day with your partner or with your family. A lot of these are part of what people want in a business, and the product or service that they're providing is just a vehicle to create that. And so if you come at it from a business first perspective and understand what you want over time from that business, the brand and the product and how you service your customers and consumers are just a vehicle to create whatever that entity is and whatever that freedom is for yourself. Using Chris and Mel as an example again, it's always been our desire as a management team for them to be able to go on as many holidays with the kids as possible, and for the business to run as smoothly as if they were sitting at their desks.
Yeah, I love all of that. It is funny, the exit thing, even the word, how does it change and become more in the zeitgeist to kind of call selling your business an exit, and that's your whole strategy, rather than build a profitable business that's a great place to work, and a lot of other motivations.
I suppose what you're motivated by as well,
Totally.
and obviously if you're motivated by a financial gain at the end of it, then maybe that is part of your strategy. But I think in the drinks business that can be a bit more challenging, and as kind of you both mentioned, the likelihood of that happening in the current climate is probably not quite there, but who's to say that that's not available to people in the next 5 to 10 years. So kind of building a business is more important than building kind of an exit strategy, I suppose.
That's it. Craft beer, if we use that as an example, Sash, we see examples in our East Coast client base of unreal craft beer businesses, right? But you don't see that in the headlines. They're fantastic businesses. They're building great brands. They're delivering to their communities. And we have touched on this in a Crackin' Cans episode previously. But those folks are probably beyond being able to get an exit, in the selling out to a major multinational business right now. But it doesn't change the fact that they're great businesses doing unreal things for their teams, their brands, their customers, and their local consumers and community, and that they're reaping the benefits of that as
Yeah,
well.
100%, 100%. Um, what's kind of to add on to that? What's the biggest, you clearly didn't think past the launch day, red flag from you guys, from your perspective? What have you seen kind of go, I don't think these guys really thought about? Don't have to obviously say, but what's something that you guys have seen and you're like, oh, that could have been avoided, or you haven't thought too far past this? And it's really, this kind of does delve into the side of business.
I think it's probably just not having a plan post that manufacturing day. You've kind of made the product, it's landed somewhere, hopefully in a warehouse somewhere, and the next step is often, I find, if you kind of chat through a few things, people sort of like, okay, I just thought I would make it and make an Instagram post and now it would be sold out. And didn't kind of think through, this is going to be a lot of work. The work has not really begun yet, as they're probably thinking sometimes, oh, I've worked for the last year on getting to this point of manufacturing. I've done the recipe, I've done the design, and I'm ready for a little bit of a break. And in some ways, like, the hardest work has yet to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, that's always kind of the one, is that next plan of, now you've got the stock, now you've got to get people to love it and repurchase it and not just purchase it once. And oftentimes you have to walk into every bottle shop, and that's not easy, trying to sell your product and backing it and hearing everybody's critique of it, listening to bad feedback as well. Like, it gets pretty hard once you've got the product in hand.
Yeah, that's when the grind starts, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you launch, it should not be the first time that your target consumers have met your product. That's a big risk. The other thing I think during the launch phase is that people procure too much stock. Jem touched on this earlier, but everyone is looking for a unit price. They're not necessarily cognizant of that unit price at that quantity is going to be an invoice that is tens of thousands of dollars, and that might be more than you've got to start this business. So with the 10 grand example, it's possible to get 500 litres of product and do an NPD run. At East Coast, we work with a number of people across the East Coast of Australia who are able to help you with pilot runs and stuff like that. If you don't have your own brewery, distillery, winery, or coffee roastery, where our mobile filling can come and do that for you, we can connect you to our referral network of folks, some of whom go down to a couple of 100 litres of one flavour of product. And that enables you to be able to get in the game. It enables you to go and launch locally, potentially at a farmer's market or through, your local markets, your school or your Christmas fetes, all of those types of things where you can actually get face-to-face with the consumer and you can sell the product, but you also get live feedback as well. So I'm a big fan of the farmer's market soft launch, and that goes to what Jem's saying around, okay, I've got the product in a warehouse, now I'm going to sell it. And it's like, okay, if we'd thought about this along the way, we could have actually had a multi-staged plan whereby if your target audience, when they're tasting it and purchasing it from you in your soft launch, have feedback, you can take that important feedback on before you do, larger production runs and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of building data and learning as you go. And I think that that's just, it's so vital to make sure that you don't put all your eggs in one basket and you try to kind of build that data as you go, because it's what's going to really help you to decide what you do next, and you'll have that to back it. So yeah, it's a great example of that, what you shared there, JP. What operational thing could save every founder a world of pain if they if they just listened, or do you think, or listened in general?
I've got this one. I've got to jump
Okay.
in.
Maybe
Bench
I could get
testing.
CK over here too. He might need to hear it.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about this one, bench testing from a can point of view. There are products that can't live safely in an aluminium can for very long or any amount of time. And the
Yeah.
worst time to discover that is after you've spent your startup capital on producing the product.
Mm.
We work with Visy, the major packaging manufacturers, and their laboratory. And through our customer partners, myself, Gem, Robbie, and anyone in our team, you can get a free referral to Visy's laboratory and send your product there, and they will tell you if it can safely live in a can for any amount of time or not. It's the free step that people forget to do that causes major upset across their launch plans. Really passionate about that one. Gem, have you got another one?
Oh, look, I think only to build on that, it's probably the number one thing that we tell customers that's the most not listened to thing about what we share. And it is just critical. And I think they're sort of, well, we had it over here. Like they just don't want to take that step. And it's just so important. So I definitely agree with that. I think in summary, that sort of communicating and listening is those two things that will save you a lot of time, whether that's communicating when you manufacture really, really well, being at that first run, reading everything that you're kind of provided and given, whether that's about GS1 laws or about what needs to actually go on your packaging labeling to get into retailers. I feel like there is a lot of information around, but you definitely need to read it all, talk to people, listen to what they're saying, and communicate exactly what you need, what your vision is, communicating with whoever is working, if you have a team yet, or people that are working in your ecosystem. I think communicating really well, and trying to have as much clarity of thought as possible whilst being open to feedback and hearing different things. I think it's quite hard to get to because there's a level of determination that you need to have and loyalty to your idea and this kind of thing that you want to try. But the more you can put it in your mind as a theory and that you're going to try to test this experiment, I think that can kind of keep you open to feedback and open to learning and listening whilst staying sort of on track to what your thesis is and seeing if that's possible.
And that's something everyone loves using ChatGPT for everything these days. You can ask ChatGPT to tell you the places or the things that you might have forgotten. You can use it as your sounding board and say, hey, I think all of these things about launching my drink. What are the things I might have forgotten? Or what are the things I might not even know about? And it will at least, maybe not in the detail that you could get from working with a supplier like East Coast, but it will at least second guess maybe where your biases are and give you a couple of little rabbit holes to explore. And I think that's the thing that I wish I had done more when I was on the customer side. So before I joined East Coast, I was a customer of East Coast. And prior to that, most of my career was in the brand side of beverage in sales and marketing. But now on the supplier side, I wish I had used my suppliers for more intel and asked more questions, because ultimately suppliers want the customer to get it right, because then it's happy days for everybody.
Oh,
Whoa! Very
wow,
happy
look
days.
at that. Why do you think there was a reluctance, or perhaps like just didn't consider it to ask the questions with your suppliers or manufacturers, like, and when you were kind of sitting on that side, what do you think it was that stopped you from doing it? Was it, I'll leave it open, actually. I won't feed the answer.
I think it's probably a combination of ego in more corporate businesses, and
Yep.
that you think that you know better than suppliers,
Yep.
and there's a bit of not knowing what I didn't know. I didn't know that suppliers who work with entire industries probably know what everyone is doing, and that if I ask them, that they might give me not trade secrets, but at least an opinion or some advice based on what they're seeing that I'm not seeing. Because as a customer, I can only see the market. As a
Yeah.
supplier, I can see everyone's plans, and in some cases, NPD pipelines for multi-year. So if you tell me something at East Coast, I absolutely do not go and tell anybody or other customers about that. But if I see something happening in 5 customers or 10 customers or 15 customers, that's now a trend. And if somebody asks me, I can give them the trend anonymized and sort of say, oh, I'm seeing a lot of people loving this can size at the moment. And there's a
Yeah.
bit of a resurgence in the retro can styles and stuff like that. So have you
Yeah.
considered that? Those sorts of things are where we pull our trend data from, because at East Coast, we see everybody's plans well before they get to market. But as a customer, you only see what your competitors are working on when it's launched.
Mm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I would say I was in the same boat of not really using suppliers to my advantage or building great relationships with suppliers. And I've really learned from my seat in East Coast, the great businesses that I work with do have great relationships with their suppliers, and
Mm.
it's very mutual. And we try to help each other as much as you can. And I can actually see that as a theme, really, that great, well-running businesses are treating everyone from customers to their suppliers to producers, manufacturers, everybody in their ecosystem. They're trying to show as much respect to or build a relationship and build something great together. And I can kind of, every day I see that difference. It's really good.
Well, that's good. So you guys have learned something
Mm.
coming over there.
Absolutely, we
You've
have.
learned nothing. You've learned that. No, I'm joking. um, what's the dream that founders have that maybe they could let go of before it might kind of hurt the business that you've seen come through? I know, like, I always hear people say, like, I want to start a drinks business because I want to sponsor a Formula One team. Let's just say, like, that would
Mm-hmm.
be the grandest thing, but that's very,
Pull that right
very,
out of
very,
my head.
yeah. But I do hear that a lot. They want to kind of associate themselves with these kind of higher achieving or higher level humans
Yeah.
generally. What do you think? What have you seen kind of come through that you're like, just don't
I
worry
have a
about that?
couple about this that I'm passionate about. One
Yeah,
is that enthusiasm doesn't equal results in sense of like, by that I mean
grind it out, baby. Grind it out.
sometimes that hoping that the numbers are going to be amazing because you think it's the best idea in the world isn't necessarily reality. So I think it can get you far in terms of like getting a product made, but you do need to kind of know the numbers and be realistic about the numbers and realistic about growth targets and trying to hit them. Sometimes I think people just only fuel off, oh, it's going to be amazing. And then they kind of lose enthusiasm and lose it when the numbers don't match exactly where they thought straight away. So I always think that about have to be realistic, but can be enthusiastic, but grounded in reality. And the other one I have is sometimes that I think founders want to kind of bypass some of the work that I think is really important. For example, if you put on some salespeople who are going out to the on premise, going out to bars and restaurants, or maybe they're going out to retailers, I don't think that as a founder you're ever kind of too good for that, in the sense that that's where no one's going to be more passionate about your brand than you are. And you're always going to get great feedback and understand what the world is like for your salesperson going out there by continuing to have that, somewhat in your work that you do. Not to say you do it every day, but I think it's a great thing to keep alive, especially, of course, in the early days. And Stu Gregor taught me that from Four Pillars. He was always in bars, meeting people who were representing his brand. He was always, if he was going past a bottle shop, he would go in and have a chat to them. Mostly of that thought that no one's going to represent the brand better than he does.
I love that because I think that there's like people get off on that as well, like bar staff or say someone at BWS or something. They're like, oh, you're the guy with who's on the label kind of thing, or you're the girl that's built this brand. I think people actually kind of get quite uh, excited by that, and
Mm.
so it can build really great relationships, keeps them in touch with what's actually going on. So I think that's a really interesting kind of take on it. Yeah. What about from your perspective, JP?
I think Jem's kind of touched on folks who are racing to get off the tools.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
Sash, what was the question again?
No, that's all right. We're just talking about how like founders have this kind of dream to say, buy a Formula One team or something, and there's kind of that's their dream when they start these brands or these drinks businesses. But what's something they kind of need to let go of, I suppose, before it kind of hurts them along the way. So what have you seen, or what do you kind of see founders doing in that sense?
I don't know I have an answer to this.
Yeah.
But Jem making the point earlier around hope being a fairly average business strategy really stuck with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I just have to echo her thoughts in the
Yeah.
absence of having any of my own on this topic.
No, it just means that that's where it's at, right? I suppose it's like you can't live on hope, basically. So let go
Yeah.
of that dream and keep moving forward. And you do have to do the grind. Like, it's not about, stay, and by staying on the tools does actually give you a really great sense of what's happening.
I think
you
the lesson
must.
for me there is, in previous experiences, I've had founders who were really just loved the idea, and they were
Love the
so
idea of the
enthusiastic and excited
drink.
about that idea. They, kind of already saw us buying boats and cars and all this kind of stuff way before it ever happened. But there was no plan of how to get to that point. So I just think that enthusiasm is great, but you've got to have a plan, and if plans change, and that's also okay. But you've got to have a plan to how you're actually going to achieve what you think you're going to.
The boats and the cars and the beautiful lifestyle doesn't come without hard work for most people, and I think that having that as letting go of that at the start and potentially having that thought as you go through, maybe that's something nice. But to kind of build your whole business on that, it's a bit of a ick.
Yeah,
I don't know
agreed.
too many people in the drinks industry who have boats. And maybe that's just because I'm not looking at one.
Only those that have sold. Only those have been sold.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. I know some folks who have had some really nice exits and have taken their families on some beautiful holidays
Yeah.
and, those sorts of things. But if anyone's watching and would like to take the three of us on their boat because they've got a banging beverage business that's thumping
We don't
away,
know about.
then we would love to be proven wrong. But I don't know that that's necessarily happening for too many people, though maybe it's the quiet ones that
Yeah.
you never know about that are actually ticking away in the background and
It
doing
is
really, really
another thing
well.
that East Coast lets you do, which is kind of why I love working here, is that enthusiasm where in previous you'd be like, we'll get 100,000 units and we'll pay a really low margin. But then you're left with, oh God, we did this wrong. I would change the label. I would have done this differently. Our retailers are saying they don't love this format. As with East Coast, you are actually able to have, okay, I think this, let's do it, and then let's see, and be able to change those things. I've almost never met anyone who didn't change something after their first run, I think, in terms of design or flavor or something, some element.
Oh, maybe then, Jem, the thing that maybe is holding founders back is thinking that their first iteration is perfect
Yeah, that's
and
actually great.
not having an openness to progress as part of their product development and evolution.
Yeah, agreed.
That's a nugget, if ever I've heard one.
Nuggets.
So many
I've
nuggets.
seen a few beverage founders with some nuggets. Now that I know happens.
Oh,
Usually late at night.
what was I going to say? Now you've thrown me with that one. I mean, to be honest, though,
Gotcha.
if people think that they're getting into the drinks business to buy boats, and we're basically saying if you think you're getting into this business to buy boats and cars and have European holidays twice a year, this is probably the wrong business to get into, because it potentially has a lot more grind to it than just that kind of stuff.
But
So,
it depends on your idea, Sash. I
oh
think
yeah,
like if
100%.
you're the first business to launch cannabis beverages in Australia, if and when that's legalized, then you might have more than one boat. Your 2-year-old child might be flying business class, more than twice annually, right? But so
Yeah.
it's like being in the right places at the right time when things like
Yeah,
that,
striking at the
present
right time.
themselves might be, where those opportunities exist.
Mm.
But I think if we're talking about craft breweries right now, probably
Mm,
starting a craft brewery so that you can sponsor a V8 Supercars team or, buy a really fancy boat probably isn't where it's at. But if you're starting a craft brewery to make a really awesome community hangout and to put your name or your face on a beer and, create a great spot for family and friends to hang out, then that's great motivation.
Um,
mm.
I would say a lot of these things are true for most businesses, though, right? That like
Mm.
all business is hard. It's hard work, and finding the right business model that makes sense financially and a brand that makes sense, and finding your place in the market takes a long time. It takes a long time to be that like brand that everyone knows. I think that's another funny one that people often mistake how long it takes to really build that.
Yeah.
Kind of even in a suburb for people to be like brand recognition and that sort of thing. So I think all business is hard work, really.
If we had to do an and or, those founders who are maybe maniacal about their product and their experience versus those who are getting into it to buy a boat, I think we're going to see a big difference in the success and failure between those two cohorts.
Mm,
Mm.
Um,
mm.
I mean, the strategy is completely different too. I mean, the way that they're kind of approaching it. So, or maybe you would think so. Um, Two more questions. What's hot heading into next year? What do you see kind of happening in the drinks game next year? What's kind of cooked, and you think probably not going to see that back across craft, I suppose, predominantly.
Mm.
What do you see? Because we're kind of heading into what are we now? November.
I
So
think
yeah,
next year we're going to see a lot more deep diving into the functional still. There's still a lot more growth in that area or more interesting flavors or, customers kind of coming back with feedback about what they're looking for in non-alc functional good for you space. Skincare in drinks, big believer in. We'll see a growth in that over the next year. And probably I think the RTD space of where, say, like gin and tonics and those kind of drinks, I think that's really starting to see some change from being G&Ts and limoncello and those kind of things. I think you'll start to see
yeah,
some innovation in those kind of flavor areas. I still think there's a lot of inspiration to come from Asia as well in terms of flavor. That's
yeah.
always a big one for me. I always go to those kind of aisles in the shop and see just things that I've not really thought of, even in the product combinations and yeah. So those are big ones for me. I don't know about out. It's kind of funny because I feel like there's a customer for everything. But in terms of big trends, I think that you've seen it with beer and craft beer, especially, is breweries really honing in on what they do incredibly well. One Drop is a great example of choosing who their customer is and really exploring and going really deep into the niche that they are and the category that they are in terms of doing great, flavorful fruit-based sours and smoothies and that kind of thing. So I think breweries might start to hone in a little bit more on exactly how deep they want to go in a particular niche rather than trying to hit across like a broad spectrum.
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting.
I think we're going to see the drinks industry sort of fire up again over the next 12 to 24 months. Functional's definitely not going away. I think we will see the late arrivers to the protein trend, but those who understand better for you and how that better for you trend is tracking, because it's not static. Better for you is not a static trend, it's a movement. And so it's currently tracking through protein. Jem mentions Cute Drinks, who are a non alcoholic margarita who have hyaluronic acid, vitamin C, and various skin micronutrients that you're nourishing yourself from the inside out. That is where Better For You is going to track to both digestive health, and we've seen that globally, but we haven't seen it as much in Australia. Apple cider vinegar is kind of back on the boil in Australia. We will see, I think, tea innovation
Oh,
really kind of take off. There's an incredible product called I think they're the Copenhagen Tea Company. They are positioning themselves as non-alcoholic champagnes. They are sparkling teas in champagne bottles from Denmark that are really expensive. And I think we're going to see premium tea, some stuff kind of happen there. Because there is a bit happening globally there too. Coffee is going to start to move towards health, I reckon. And coffee is going to try and catch better for you, and try and track with the evolution of what, coffee or caffeine plus is as well. So I can kind of see that happening too. So yeah, coffee, tea. I think we'll see the total market sort of come back on oil. I think we'll also see coffee sort of track towards better for you and health and stuff like that. So, just having caffeine in it, I think, is going to be something that we'll start to see other things added to coffee. So we'll start to see some stuff happen in tea, particularly in the premium end of the market, I think. Total beverage is going to sort of come back on the boil. We're absolutely going to continue to see drinks as merchandise and as extensions of people's brands, whether they're in a drink space and adding a ready-to-drink option, or whether they're beyond the drink space, potentially they're influencers or, celebrities or sports brands or those sorts of things. We do a lot of work with Wallaby Water as a partner of East Coast. They do a lot of custom waters. They've done for Maya, for Crown, for Style Runner, and those sorts of brands. So, yeah, they're the things that I think we're going to see in total beverage that continue to grow in 2026.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I really see the coffee one. I can see how that one comes through definitely. And the better food drinks just continues to keep moving. Final thought: if you could hit every founder with a loving but maybe brutal truth, or just a loving truth, or some really great advice, what is it? Just that one big nugget for them to take away.
Oh, it's a big
I
question.
know,
I
big
guess the first thing
question.
that comes to mind is find a great team and then share your vision and trust the team, I suppose, is a great bit of advice.
Ah,
I think getting comfy asking more questions, even if you think you know the answer, is just a really handy way to sense check your own biases. And particularly if they're people you trust, or they are the customers or the consumers that you want on board the growth of your business and your brand, that, sense checking those perspectives, even if you are right, can always be valuable.
any final thoughts for people cracking cans for 2026?
I
Keep
feel
it
like
up.
we might come back on. I was thinking this the other night, is that post-COVID, we've seen a lot of different change pre-COVID, during COVID, after. And I think that somewhat people have forgotten the great things about having drinks together, meeting up, being social, being together, not knowing what might happen, who you might meet that night out. And I kind of feel like drinks might be back on. And that might be in
Getting
maybe
lit.
low format, low ABV. Maybe it's with you're having a non-alc with your friends, but just actually being back together in places, in third spaces and venues. I think it's like we're going to see a trend come back to that.
Summer of Gemma.
Yeah, we're back on.
Yeah. Cheers to having a drink again. Yeah, I like the sound of that. Well, yeah, we should go for drinks.
Definitely. I'm down. You can't handle me. It's like,
I
when
don't know
it's like
that yet.
where mums get let out and then they just all of a sudden they're like who is this?
I look
Oh,
forward to it.
much. That's us.
Okay, now that we're finished, I don't know about you two both drinking together.